Hey, Dodger Game viewers. For those of you who haven't seen my story of coming to believe in Mormonism and coming to realize that I've been had, then perhaps you will enjoy watching this rendition of it. And even if you have seen renditions I've done, this was an interview I did a couple months ago on another channel, a fellow YouTuber, Madeline, who is running Galactic Storyteller Channel, which is filled with a lot of really good information. She's a really smart girl, was active LDS, and took the time to investigate the truth claims of the church and came to the conclusion that she'd been lied to, kind of like me. So, without further ado, I'm just going to bust right into this interview, and those of you who haven't seen it on her channel can see it here. If you haven't visited her channel, I recommend it. She's got a lot of very interesting information and a great website. Here we go. This is part one. There's a part two, and really we need to do a part three. Yeah, that's me on the left. Looking spooky.
Got this little fat one, which is got.
Okay, but we. Hey everyone, it's Galactic Storyteller. I know it's been a while since I've posted a video, but I have a really fun guest with me. Some of you may know him. He goes by the name Dodger Game. He has put up all kinds of information on Mormonism, esoterics. We're going to get into that, and as you can see, he's quite a character. So I anticipate a really fun conversation. We are going to do two parts because we're running short on time today, but we wanted to get this ball rolling. So welcome my new friend, Dodger Dave. How are you?
Hey, pretty good, Madeline.
I see you have all of your little amenities there.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it was pure inspiration. I went into Dave's Health and Nutrition in Salt Lake, and I saw this almost replica of the Joseph Smith Seer stone. It's just a little light. I said, I gotta have some of this esoteric Seer stone bling, and for some kind of props in a video. We don't need to use that thing on LDS.org when I've got my own stone. I had some other stones. I picked them up on the beach. There's these white stones in Carlsbad, a bunch of them, and I take them everywhere I go, except for, I don't know where they are now because I'm super disorganized. But, I got this.
Just wanted to say briefly here, the audio quality on this video is a little bit lower than usual. There were some technical issues. Actually, I think I had some cellophane or something that I was using to prop up my phone, interfering with some of the audio quality. The second part does have better audio quality, and there's a portion of this that somehow develops a little feedback, but it's what I've got, and it's definitely usable. It's just not quite as good as part two is. So there we go.
This little fat one, which has got some cool colors on it.
What kind is
And I
that
got
one
this
in the
white
front?
one. Huh?
The one that you have in the front, what kind of stone is that?
I have no idea.
If I could see it better, I could probably tell you.
It might be fluorite. I'm hearing that it might be fluorite. Yeah, and then I got these two crystal ball ones here,
Mm-hmm. Is the fluorite purple?
Yeah, it's got like kind of green and purple. It's all, there's no telling what you could see in that with a little help from, some morning glory seeds and stuff, some heavenly blue.
Okay. I apologize to the listeners. We are having a little bit of staticky technology. We're going to do our best to get through that. It took us over an hour to get going this morning because of all of our technological issues. So, sometimes it just is what it is, and that's the way they deal with truthers. So we'll just work through it.
I have my
I'll show.
Not always.
What was that?
I said many times I've had, some audio quality difficulties, because basically I started doing this stuff on New Year's Day, I believe, of 2017, and I was just on this really basic phone, kind of a low-end phone, and I just downloaded some screen capture software. This is actually, Madeline, this is the first time I've actually been like me on a camera.
I know, I feel honored.
I haven't told my identity.
You're almost showing your face, but I've listened to a number of your videos, Dave, and I would love for you to tell us a little bit about how you got started in discovering what was really going on with Mormonism and the occult perspective that you've gained, because honestly, you are the only other person that I have heard talk about Mormonism from an occult perspective when everybody else is going at it from Christianity. And Mormonism, as you and I have both covered, was not built on Christianity, so therefore you can't break it down from that standpoint. And I do want to remind the viewers, occult just means hidden. It's information that is not seen. That doesn't mean it's good or it's bad. It just means that it's esoteric, meaning there's an inner knowledge, and what they've given to you and I would be the exoteric information, the outer knowledge. But you have to go in and understand it from the foundation's point of view, which would be Joseph's occult, his occult perspective with the family. And this is no doubt why you have your stones and all the little modalities that you've got there. So tell me how you got started.
Well, it's probably most appropriate to begin closer to a beginning, because of getting into it has a lot to do with the background that got me out of it, So would you like me to discuss a little bit of how I began to my journey that got me into Mormonism? Because I didn't grow up in the church.
Okay, how did you fall into Mormonism?
I started off life kind of with a spiritual perspective. A lot of the people that speak about Mormonism, there's basically, I think there's kind of two camps, and they seem to divide almost along political lines. You've got your people that the small percentage of people that leave Mormonism that become Christian Republicans, and then you got your people that become Democrats and atheists. And it seems they both follow very strict guidelines as to what's considered politically correct along within that perspective, it seems to me. And for me, I started off life as a spiritual journey, okay? I actually was asking questions and getting answers from a non-physical, entity, starting as I recall, the day I was born. And this really supports a Swedenborgian, adopted by Joseph Smith, theology of a premortal existence. So I was always acclimated with that. The first thing I remember seeing was my arm, my right arm, and I saw how small it was, and I asked this question, which comes from the perspective of having some kind of premortal, existence. And it was, how did I get so small? And I got this answer, and I can't tell you if it was spoken or anything, because I wouldn't have known any language that I can, but what came to my mind was, in process of time, you will become like your dad. And I could see my dad, who I believe was standing in the doorway of the delivery room. You will become big like him. So I was used to having this ability to communicate with an unseen intelligence, I guess. And so on the 22nd of November, 1963, I was a little child and I was watching all alone. I was just sitting on the couch. I was watching the presidential caravan with JFK, and I watched him get shot. And that really affected me, and I started being very concerned about death as a 4-year-old child. And that kind of moved into, my parents got divorced when I was 6, and I was pretty much separated from both my mom and dad, and in a foreign area near Washington D.C. For a while, and the kids were, kind of like, they were persecuting me, like Joseph Smith story, but they really were, and I didn't have any friends. And I did ask this kid, like in the bathroom for like about 40 minutes about everything about his religion. He was Catholic, and he was telling me all about purgatory and all this stuff. Probably the teacher came and goes, what's going on? Why did you guys ever come back? And I'm going, I'm learning about, God and his religion. And because I was super curious. So I got my mom to take me to church a couple times when I was like in 3rd grade later. And I kind of gave up at that point, and I was watching, I was doing some esoteric stuff as a child. I was watching a show called Dark Shadows, which is based on Collins Illuminati family in Massachusetts and their witchcraft and that sort of a thing. And at that point, somewhere there, after going to a Lutheran church a couple times, I kind of gave up and started studying cryogenics in 4th grade. Well, I just read one book on it because I was trying to figure out a way to live forever. And at that point, I'd given up on the whole, Christian thing. I started reading the Bible when I was like 4 years old. One that had a lot of pictures, and the pictures really, I can see them now in my mind. They had a big impact on me. And a lot of them were these horrible things with, God killing people and Abraham sacrificing his son or Moses killing the Egyptian, the flood, all these things. And I didn't have a really very positive view of this God. And I was very concerned about all this, and I just said, it's baloney. And then what happened that got me into the church, basically, what started it were a couple of things. My mom used to drive down to San Diego. We were up above Santa Barbara, same stake as Christy Allen, by the way. And it was about a 4-hour trip, and I was all alone on this Friday afternoon. A couple of my friends came over, one really close friend and another friend I've been to school with. And the other friend started telling this kind of, demonic story about this entity that appeared to his friend, in the night and all this stuff. And what happened was there was a presence that entered the room. Both these guys were going to, like, Ben and I were going to play Monopoly or something like that. Some fairly innocent. We were 8th grade. We were going to, like, have a kegger, right?
So I'm going to stop you right there because we're having some static with the technology. But what you're saying is in 8th grade, you were having a sleepover and you guys had a demonic entity that came into the room?
The sleepover never happened because this demonic entity entered the room, and both of my friends said, "We're out of here."
Oh, I see. Okay.
We're out of here. Yeah. So I was all alone with this dark, very scary presence in the house, and I called a lady who was like above my mom in this, nutritional MLM thing. I knew she was Christian, and some of her Baptist friends had left these Gideon Bibles. She said, just start reading in Matthew. And actually what happened is I sat down in this particular chair where I've had various important spiritual experiences in that house, and a kind of a light entered the room, and that whole entity just left. And I actually started believing what I was reading. And at that point I started reading the New Testament on my own as like a 13-year-old. And that really, I started studying, and I felt like, I'm too bad of a person. And I was reading in the book of James, not the Joseph Smith James 1:5 having any particular effect on me, but more like chapter 2 and so forth, where it was talking about, making your works be good so you could be a worthy and a good person. And it's like, I remember in particular, a verse that talked about the rudder of a ship is so small, but it guides the ship, and it compared that to your tongue and the effect that, like it said in the New Testament, Jesus, contrary to the word of wisdom, said, it's not what goes in your mouth that defiles you, but what comes out of it. And I thought, I've always used them. I was cussing at 3 years old. I climb up on the fence naked, there goes that damn green trash truck, and I don't know, first time I was drunk, I was 3 years old. My parents flipped, a thing of wine out. I was really, a trouble at 3. So I just, I started studying the New Testament, and then we were in the John Birch Society, and there were Mormons in there, and I was studying all this stuff about how to save the country from communism, and I read None Dare Call It Conspiracy, and I went to the John Birch Society summer camp, with famous people's kids, too. The guy was G. Edward Griffin, his daughter was, sitting in front of me on the bus, and they were talking about smoking weed, and I'm like, what? How could you kids be caught up in this Tavistopian trap, But there they were, junior high school, daughter of oh man, this girl might send out some Danites against me if she hears me wreck her reputation like this. Yeah, they were all talking about what weed they like to smoke, and I was really, I was doing the right thing. Sorry about the 666 sign. And yeah, and then anyway, these Mormons
grabbing you people.
Yeah.
All right, so move along to your baptism. You got baptized when?
Okay. Well, and so my mom got invited by these people. I'll tell you real quick, to this Mormon open house. And she had a spiritual experience in that. They came to the door, some lady that she knew, actually, well, I know her too, her and her 2 boys. And then when the lady asked her if she would like to go to this LDS open house, a pillar of light appeared around her and her boys. My mom's like, what the heck is that? She was, full-on atheist at this point. She was a zoology major, as was my father. And she heard herself say words that she didn't intend to say. She was trying to say, I don't, I'll let you know if I'm interested, but the words came out of her mouth, I'll be there. And she went there, and, a guy who was a 70, everybody was 70, not everybody, but it doesn't mean first forum. Back then it just means you're doomed to teach gospel essentials for the rest of your life, right? And this guy asked her, and he was also in this nutritional MLM, but not in her group, and he said, hey, how would you think about what you learned tonight? After she saw the genealogy stuff and food storage and all this stuff supposed to make people feel warm and fuzzy about Mormonism. And she said, oh, okay, yeah, you can come on over with you and your partner. And they did. And so they taught us. And I saw a light around this guy, one of the guys. And I asked my mom what she did. She noticed anything unusual. The first thing was teach about Joseph Smith first time, and then Plan of Salvation, which answered all these questions that I had in my mind about the purpose of life and stuff. So I had this spiritual experience, and she said, yeah, I saw a light around one of the guys. And I said, which one was it? And it was the same guy. He was actually, the guy was an Air Force psychologist, probably an MFAL guy, right? I don't know. And yeah, and long story short, we were like the eternal investigators. My mom wasn't ready to join. She didn't believe instantly, and I believed right away because I saw all this, this light around him and answered the questions I had in my mind about the purpose of life. But I was trying to conform. I thought I was too much of a hypocrite because I was too bad of a kid, I had to get my works in line with being good enough to join the church. And we went down to the LA Temple area, and we saw Saturday's Warrior. And I was like, that just connected everything. So yeah, seriously, Saturday's Warrior. And my mom was like, I'm ready to get baptized. And the guy almost runs off the freeway on the way back. But that's what happened. And I was baptized when I was like 15. Yeah, when I was 14, they're like, you're the same age as Joseph Smith was when he was having his vision and all this stuff. And that was it was really something. So I thought I was doing the right thing for sure. And I did have spiritual experiences to actually lead me into the church, as a matter of fact.
So you see auric fields then? Hold on. Do you see auric fields then? Is that fair to say?
No, it's not fair to say. I don't generally see them. This was very unusual for me.
Okay. All right. So that was an anomaly, and you took that as a sign that this was truth. This man was speaking the truth.
Yeah, that, and I felt, like I said, I felt in the plan of salvation discussion, which was the second one at that time, I felt like it just, the man's search for happiness clicked. Mm-hmm. It gave a continuity of, answering those questions. Why are we here? Where did we come from? Where do we go after death? And those were really big questions for me that I'd been thinking about since I was 4 years old.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so once you were baptized, then did you serve a mission?
What happened was even though I was really all in at that point, I kind of got out of activity in the church by the process of, I was sitting in that same chair reading Section 89, and it said, mild drinks of barley are recommended in the Word of Wisdom. That's good for the body. And I said, well, duh, that's beer, And after getting kind of hammered with some beer, I said, well, I got hammered, and there's whiskey sitting there in the house waiting for my uncle whenever he comes to visit, and we use that, and the next thing you know, my friends introduced some weed at a football game, and I just figured, even though I cleansed myself from it and was really upset with myself, I kind of got on this pathway that led to me feeling I was very much a sinner and a lost soul until I made a comeback when I wanted to get married, and I had very spiritual experiences. I watched this girl getting on the bus that I had seen in Methodist stuff when I went with my friend whose dad was a preacher, but I wouldn't allow him to baptize me because I felt he didn't have authority. As a 13-year-old, I'm like, dude, I hang out at your house, and I know what you're like, and you can't be like some kind of a holy guy from God because I know how you run your house. I mean, you take your kids to see the hair thing, And
wait, you take your children to see what? So you recognize that this man...
hair concert? Yeah, that was, kind of the new age, hair. Remember that? Mm-hmm. In like 1970 or 71 or something. Yeah, so I didn't feel the man had authority. He wanted to baptize me, and I was interested in what I learned at the Methodist church, and I went to their MYF stuff. Anyway, I saw this girl getting on the bus, and a voice spoke to me and said, she's yours if you keep my commandments. And so at that point, I was already, I'd gone through a number of really gnarly spiritual experiences kind of on my journey to come out of what I felt was the dark side, I mean, some really heavy experiences. And I wound up, giving up, all the stuff that I was doing kind of on an organized, systematic, in the process, And so I did, we got married and by the bishop, and I was a good boy that whole time I was with her. And that, I started off, I said, I'm using alcohol and drugs right now, but I'm not going to break the law of chastity, as we call it in our church. And she was the queen of the Job's daughters, meaning her father was a master mason, and everyone that she hung out with were, children of Mason.
I want to make sure that the listeners heard that your wife's father was a master mason.
And I'm sure he was far above anything in the Little Lodge because of the position that the influence he held in that town. But yeah, he was, and she was the queen of the Job's daughters, which is your father has to be a master mason. This is one of the two organizations of like the young women of Freemasonry. One is the Rainbow Girls, which has no requirement of your dad being a Freemason of any sort, but the Job's daughters, the father must be at least a master Mason. And I was living with a family where the father was a master Mason. So I didn't solicit anything from this girl. She just appeared at the door with her friend, who was also a Job's daughter, who I knew better from school. And her friend was kind of basically after me. And we went on this double date. My brother and I were just doing surfboard repair. And, when the other girl opened the backseat door and sat down, it was like, oh, I have my choice. That's when I had to, oh my God, this girl, they're, trying, she's interested in me, and she's giving me a choice. And I took the front seat because that was the girl that the voice had told me, she's yours if you keep my commandments.
Okay,
and, she was a very pretty girl.
Hold on just a second, Dave. At this point, retrospectively, do you think that maybe you were targeted if you had two of these daughters that could have been suitors for you? They were coming after you, as it were. Do you think you were being targeted?
Well, the one who became my wife was not after me. She was completely floored that I sat in the front seat.
Oh, okay.
We were talking, we went to this college, we all went to the same college, which was about half an hour from where we lived, and I had to walk at like 6 in the morning to this bus, and anyway, we wind up going back and forth on the bus, and so I sat with both of those girls at different times, just talking with them, one because I knew her, and the other one because the voice had said that to me, and I knew who she was, but like when I was in 8th grade, I didn't even come up to her shoulders. She was very tall, and I was like the shortest kid in all my classes at that point. I was like a late grower, so I was like, she's a pretty girl, but like she's like a foot out of range, I remember thinking that at NYF actually. So anyway, I married her, and I went through a very difficult time, feeling like I'm afraid God will call me on a mission. I talked to the bishop. He said, well, I'm not going to call you on a mission, but I can't absolve you of it. And, when I went back to church, because I like systematically stopped using various substances, and the last thing was like fear. And I was living at these people's house where, dad was a Freemason and his daughter was the previous queen, and she was practicing witchcraft and stuff. We listened to Let's Death together and so forth. And that got interesting too, because she kind of entered the fray, and I was like, what are you talking about? You're married, I don't do that stuff. And so we got married, and about a year later, I became a state missionary. So I took it super seriously because I felt like, I didn't go on a full-time mission, but I'm going to do my very best. So we had like 10 hours a week we devoted to missionary work at that point, and I was, we did tracking and all kinds of stuff. I'd go out like all day Tuesdays with the guys, and because I felt like I had something to make up, and I was trying very, very hard to do the very best that I could.
Okay, so while you are fulfilling that calling, you're living with a master Mason. You're married to
no. When I got married, we got our own place and stuff.
Okay.
So but when the girl started, when I started my relationship with her, which was probably on an esoteric day, like March 17th, on a Friday night, I was living with them. They just appeared because they knew. Everybody knows, it's like Mormonism in Masonry. Everybody knows who their clique is, and all her friends were like that, and they came over because that, their daughter was they all knew each other, and so I learned, various things from that were,
that was going to
pretty
be my
interesting.
question. Were you learning or exposed to esoteric information because of your affiliations now?
I was exposed to more esoteric stuff because in my childhood, people were just coming into my life. I'd wander somewhere, and I remember some guy who was like a Satanist started. I walked through this like village. It was kind of like a Haight-Ashbury kind of thing below where we lived, and he started talking to me about witches in the hills and all this stuff. And he was into Satanism, and then the neighbors said, get away from him, you know, this 9-year-old, you weirdo, long-haired hippie freak. And so I was more seeking, like I said, I was totally into Dark Shadows. I wouldn't even play with anybody after school until Dark Shadows was over as a child. But then I got into Mormonism and I stopped doing some things that I had been doing. Like I went through something called Silva Mind Control. I was into all kinds of self-help, psychology. And I got into healing, which they didn't actually teach. It actually kind of came to me on how to do it. And my wife, who had been involved, you know, with witchcraft for a while, told me how she did these healings. And I go, my gosh, that's the same thing. But I didn't have any instruction. I just used the left hand to put this energy in, the right hand to take the bad stuff out. And I started healing these animals that were dying around us because someone had poisoned them. And it went from like 40 minutes of concentrating to bing, 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 to where it was happening like wham. And I was doing stuff with my family. They had a headache and that kind of stuff. I'd take it away. And then one day I just said, you know, I can't do this anymore. Like, we got into Mormonism and, you know, it says the priesthood is the way to do stuff. And I don't know where this power is coming, but it's not me just concentrating anymore. I'm just like touching things and things happen. And I'm like, I'm scared. So I quit doing the healer stuff. But I did like remote viewing. I didn't really we were like, next thing was going to be astral projection with this group. And like, we stopped doing it. You know, like my mom was like, you know, paying some money for these seminars. So I was into esoteric stuff from that, but I quit things that I thought were, you know, in conflict with Mormonism when I began getting involved with the church when I was like 14. I didn't join those 15, but I was going to priesthood meetings, I think. And,
okay, now hold on.
Hold
on. I want to ask you now, after you have this esoteric background, you've done laying on hands, healing, the energy healing, and then you've also had the Melchizedek priesthood, where you've done the laying on hands with the blessing. How different is that really? If you compare what you were doing to now the priesthood blessing, olive oil, how different is it?
Yeah, I have done that. I have made that comparison in my mind because I seem to have a lot of power to heal before I got into the church. And I had experiences where I was laying on hands and kind of miraculous things happened, you know, like at a home birth and my wife was bleeding and the midwife was LDS. She said, give her a blessing. And I did, and the bleeding stopped. But it's like I wanted to feel the power flowing through me, and I generally didn't. But what I did do, I'll tell you about an example. When I did blessings, I would connect, and I would give, you know, I would have stuff told to me and give it. But I remember reading the Joseph Smith account of, you know, the day of healing, they call it, when everybody had like the fevers, when they were like, I don't know, draining the swamp for Nauvoo or something. And he said he was so drained afterwards. And I said, that sounds like a faith healer, you know, having the power come through you like I used to do. But that's not what happens when we say, having authority, having, you know, authority of the Holy Melchizedek priesthood, lay my hands upon you and give you a blessing, blah, blah, blah. And so that was really different. But another thing that I did notice with that Melchizedek priesthood is I've seen people give like these blessings in fast and testimony, and they were just like saying stuff that they wanted to say, and they basically took away their praise. Like, I bless you that you'll go on a mission and, you know, and have a temple marriage and live happily ever after in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. And I'm like, you can't say that. But I actually had experiences like I laid hands on this lady came out and said, hey, can you give me a blessing? Somebody that I knew that I was involved with teaching her. And I said, okay. So I was doing this work on the project where they lived, you know, this county housing project. And but I was like a landscape contractor guy. And I said, well, okay. And I went out to the car and like my truck, and I was like praying, okay, I know I'm not perfect, but so I went in there and I laid hands on her head. I go, what's up? She goes, I can't tell you. And so I just put my hands on her head. And I knew at the time, I said, you've met somebody and you want to know if it's the right person, and it's not, so break it off right now. And she's like, that's exactly what it was about, you know? And I'm like, wow, because I had no idea. So I had these experiences. I would wait and listen. it's uncomfortable sometimes when you're in front of all these people for a church meeting, but I would just wait until I was told what to say. So yeah, I did function basically as a medium into the more through the Melchizedek priesthood. I did have this experience.
And that's exactly what it is like when you harness the infinite consciousness, the intelligence of the multiverse, and when you are basically channeling it or a conduit for it. That's how the spirit, in Mormon terms, really works. I had chills when you were telling me that story, telling us the story. So continue on. You spent how many years as a Mormon at this point?
What's the question? Where do you want to place me in the timeline?
How many years did you spend as a Mormon at this point?
At this point right now, or at the point where I gave that particular blessing?
The particular blessing. Just roughly.
Probably 5 years or so. I had been actively involved right around that point. Thinking about based on my career where I was with it, that probably helped. So I'd known this woman for several years, and I actually conducted her baptism, but I didn't confirm or baptize her, but I did participate. I was there when she was challenged, which was an interesting thing too, because it just shows the Mormon salesmanship thing. It was just like the guy challenges her, and then she says yes, and her son hasn't said anything. He's like 9 years old. He goes, "We're grateful for the decision you and your son have just made to join, to commit to baptism." And the kid looks at me, he's like, "What? I didn't say anything, And I was like, "Wow, that's high pressure sales, dude," because that doesn't seem right. And I noticed that more and more how missionary work was more salesmanship for some of these guys than with me. I was like trying to go by the Spirit. And I had major experiences, spiritual experiences where, gnarly stuff happened when I followed the direction that I had from the unseen, entity that told me physically what to do, and if I obeyed it and said what they told me to say, I had an experience where the whole room lit up. I was told, testify in the name of Jesus Christ. And we were given, I think, the D discussion, the plan of salvation. And I'm like, I just started my little spiel on my concept, and I'm like, that seemed cool at the end, but this seems weird here. And I kind of blew it off. And then I was told that again. And so I kind of wound up my thing, and I said, and I testified, this is true in the name of Jesus Christ. And like, wham, the room lit up with this light and this presence in it that was unbelievable. The amount, it just felt like, I had this experience when I was making my comeback to Mormonism in my room too, except for some other physical stuff happened there as well. And the feeling of like security, love, light, it was amazing. And the father was sitting directly in front of me, and then his wife and the 3 children were a little bit off here. And he just goes, all of a sudden, he put his hands up like this, he's like, whoa, oh my gosh. If it was in Utah, I might have said, oh my heck, but it wasn't. And he's like, what's happening? Oh my God. And he's looking up and all around at this light and feeling. You could feel every little particle had like this presence. It was like permeating every particle. And I go, it's the Spirit testifying of the truth of our message, Terry. And they all joined, and his youngest child was 7, so he actually baptized his child like a few weeks later, and they all went to the temple, and then their lives went to shit.
Well, okay, so how many years total did you spend as a Mormon?
I think I was really active for like 32 years, I would say. In 2010, I did my unbaptism on the porch with a beer because I was convinced through my study and so forth that there was just no way that there was no way that we had honest, righteous, decent brethren guiding us by the guidance of an all-knowing, unchanging, and merciful, truthful God. So many things contradicted whatever you want to call it, that platform, that we're told, which is kind of what the website that I did really deals with on a subject by subject as far as truth and authority claims. It's like, okay, this shows that, an all-knowing, unchanging, honest, decent, merciful God isn't guiding decent men in this organization. He contradicts himself constantly in his own scriptures, and these guys are, deliberately dishonest, using NLP and hypnotic language and all sorts of high-level sales techniques that I'm familiar with to manipulate us in general conference and stuff. And you're like, why did Jesus use mind control in church,
So for the
was like one of my wake-up things.
He's talking about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and so their hypnotic speech and the words that they use are meant to fish at you subconsciously and spiritually and draw you in and continue to bind you to their dogma. So that's what he's referring to. Okay, so we are getting short on time. We will pick up with part 2, but before we go, I want to cover when it was you first realized that this was bullshit and that you needed to make your exodus. And I also want to ask you what you think about Joseph being a peep stoner, and what else did he do? The treasure hunting, because you have stones all around you. I love stones. I love the energy of the stones. So do you feel like he was on to something there, at least a little bit?
What do you want me to start with there? Maybe there's the first beginning question.
Wherever
I noticed you got a nice bookshelf. Yeah, okay. So using your bookshelf as vacuum as a prop, I started getting things on my shelf at an early point. And finding out that Joseph Smith was a Freemason was disturbing to me, because I delved deeper than the John Birch Society people wanted you to, that gave you that same sort of manifest destiny doctrine that we find in the Book of Mormon, particularly in 1 Nephi chapter 13 and 14. And 13 talks about God being there to help the colonists become free from the oppression of the British kingdom, and so that the gospel could be restored in a land of religious tolerance, which is ironic because every time God has a theocracy, there's zero religious tolerance, whether it's in the Bible story of Moses or Brigham Young, there's zero religious tolerance. Anything else is crushed. So I was disturbed with that. And on our wedding day, I got off work at early in the morning, and we had several days off for our little honeymoon kind of thing. And so we went to the LDS church to get some tables and chairs and stuff for the wedding, for the backyard wedding. And I guess there was going to be some kind of function, and so the dude said, not that much is available. So we went to the Masonic temple, and she was like the queen, so whatever she said was she had the red carpet, So guys whatever you need, tables, chairs, we'll load them up in my vehicle, and he's like, yeah, the Mormons. Oh, you're getting into the Mormon church? Well, the Mormons used to meet in our building. We shared a building. Either the church sold them that building, or they were in that building, and while the LDS chapel was being constructed. And I'm like, wow. So the church was still in bed with the Freemasons, and I was like, that was kind of weird. And then and then after our temple marriage, I went back to visit the family, and I was visiting, and talking with the dad, Freemason, not her dad, who hated me from day one, but the other guys that were, I lived at their home for a while because it was 18, 19, kind of, needed to get a little bit away from mom at that point. And he was really drunk. And he worked in a place where he had contact with people in certain gangs and stuff. And he's like, yeah, look at all these handshakes. And he goes, now here I'm going to show you one that I'm not supposed to. And he gives me the grip that I'm not going to name it for Mormons, for members of the church that would be offended by that, but it's anyway, it's the grip that's used over the altar for sealings, and the last grip you use entering the veil.
The second token.
Yeah. And so he gives me that grip. And I use the response that's given in, at the veil. I said, what is that? And I was like tripping out. And he goes, oh, that's just something from Masonry that I wasn't supposed to show you. Don't tell anybody. He was like hammered, and I'm like, whoa. So that was one of many things that was like, okay, so that's the thing. And so I asked the bishop about it, I'm sure. He's like, oh, well, the Masons were like anciently like picking at people in the Temple of Solomon because they were still doing the brickwork on it, and I saw the ordinances, and that's how they have them. And I'm like, oh, is that a fact? And then, when I was reading, I was reading Joseph Smith's diary or something, and he said, that he became basically a master mason. He said he was raised to the sublime degree, which means the third degree in the Blue Lodge, during the night. I believe it was Friday night, if I've looked at my calendar, of March 15th and 16th. And I go, okay. And then on May 4th, about 7 weeks later, he totally changes the endowment and adds all this Freemasonic stuff, all the signs, tokens, and penalties, which are, penalties, got left out 4 years after they took them out of the Blue Lodge, which that was 1986. And then Gordon B. Hinckley waited 4 years to take them out of the LDS endowment, the straight in the throat stuff. And I was reading the Masonic oath and penalties, and it said, about splitting your throat, and the other one where you're like pulling out your heart and your bowels and all this crap happening. And I go, that's what I'm pantomiming in the temple. Oh my God. So I'm like, what are the chances Joseph Smith had this stuff revealed from God for the endowment when actually he puts it in 7 weeks after he gets the stuff from the Freemasons? Yeah, right. I'm like, too much of a coincidence, just a coincidence. So that's the number one thing that really bothers me.
But see, you had a very unique situation there. You were straddling the line between Mormonism, Masonry, and now you can, from your own experience, start seeing the parallels and what is going on. And most people don't have that type of background.
That's true. Most people don't have a lot of the background. My life has been choreographed by an unseen power. Everything. I can tell you so many experiences that are just unbelievable where I've been told to do things. I've gotten married based on that. I mean, you don't have time for those right now, but I mean, I was told where to go and when and what to do, and then my wife would appear. In fact, I just got married, and I was told, actually not necessarily, I don't even remember a voice telling me, but I told my daughter, I go, there's a girl coming into my life, and it's going to happen like today or tomorrow. And I don't know where she's coming from, but she's coming. My daughter was like, Dad, you're too lonely. Why don't I hook you up with one of the girls in back of us where we live? And I'm like, no, there's a girl coming. I've been already informed. And then she commented and said she wanted to talk with me privately or communicate with me privately. And I go, that's the girl. And so I actually gave her my phone number in my comments. And then I erased it afterwards. She called me at 8 o'clock at night. We talked till, we took our first break 5 a.m. from the next morning. And but we're married now. And yeah. And she said just what you said. She said, you're the only person that's really telling the whole story about, Mormonism from the, the occult perspective of where it actually came from, and talking about, Freemasonry and the Illuminati and that sort of thing. All these other people seem like, basically controlled opposition. They chose a line for one of the two sides of the Hegelian dialectic that's used to manipulate people that have LDS background.
Absolutely. And you know what? I can totally see why you are not invited, basically, as I am not, and I'm totally fine with that, in these ex-Mormon communities, because they are very controlled. And I don't want to disparage anybody, but what I'm going to say is it's obvious you're not controllable, as I am not either. But we're talking about esoterics and the occult, and that is taboo. They don't want to go there. Nobody wants to talk about that. Because that, it's a way to redirect people from getting at the fullness of the truth. really. And if you want to know the truth of what's going on with Mormonism, your government, medicine, education, you have to study the occult. You have to in order to see what's going on in this world. Would you agree?
Absolutely. One of the pages on my website, the website's called Mormon Truth Videos Gospel Topic Hub. And so there are various pages, and one of them actually deals particularly with the connection between these brethren, because they're all linked together. These guys who are heads of all these corporations, whether they're the privately owned cities, states, counties, pension funds, and countries, or pharmaceutical companies, education, news media, whatever, or the churches, they're all occultists, and usually what we find is the plasma, essentially the meeting ground for these, tends to be a common link through Freemasonry with a lot of them. But you look at all these church leaders, people heads of these religions, whether it's Seventh-day Adventism, whether it's Charles Taze Russell and the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, or Joseph Smith and Brigham Young and Mormonism, or the so all of these, they're all linked with certain memberships in various occult groups. Most often we find the link through Freemasonry, or it could be Anton LaVey in LaVeyan Satanism. He and L. Ron Hubbard, who founded Scientology, were both disciples of Aleister Crowley, who was, in addition to being a 33rd degree Freemason, as I guess was my great-grandfather, according to my dad, he was head of OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis, in Los Angeles, and both of those guys happened to be his disciples. And, Anton LaVey was a Freemason. I'm not sure if L. Ron Hubbard was, but they're both his disciples out of OTO, which, that and the Golden Dawn, which, you hear people interviewed. Whenever you see these the Masonic apologists, who, by the way, were instrumental in getting kicked off of 5 subreddits in Reddit, because they're the guys that attack me. It's always Freemasons, whether it's Mormon, ex-Mormon, in Reddit, LDS politics, and then there was Latter-day Saints and LDS. I got kicked off of all of them. Kicked off of ex-Mormons for sticking up for a Mormon's right to homeschool their kids and teach them whatever they wanted, including using Christian curriculum. I stood up for them, and I got kicked off there, usually with some other pretext. And I'm like, I didn't start a fight with this person. I wasn't doing the name calling. But the thing that the church doesn't want you to see is their connection with Freemasonry still exists, and they take their orders out of London.
Yeah, in preparation for this, I went back to my library. I got this book years ago. It's called The Relationship of Mormonism and Masonry, and it was written by Anthony W. Ivins. Have you seen this book?
I haven't read that book. I haven't seen it.
This particular copy, I have an insert here on church letterhead from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, dated August 13th, 1935. It is to...
Ooh, the 13th.
What was that?
I said, ooh, the 13th. That stuff just keeps popping up everywhere. Go ahead.
It does, but it talks...
13 and 73 just pop up all over the place.
It does. These are Masonic. These are Masonic numbers, but there's a little message here, and it is signed by Heber J. Grant, J. Reuben Clark, and David O. McKay. You can see, I'm going to show you their signature right here, but this is a blatant attempt to try to separate Mormonism from Masonry, even though these gentlemen are Masons. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, this is an interesting book. You'll want to look into, anybody would want to look into Masonry in terms of Mormonism, because they cannot be separated even by the hand of the prophet. So I would encourage anybody.
And these days you can read a lot of those things right online these days, which is a really great resource. You don't have to go to some library in Salt Lake or somewhere to research things. You can get you can just read some of that stuff, just bingo, here it is,
And it's all over the temples. I've done videos on symbolism, a two-part series on symbolism. I know you've covered Mormon symbolism, and so the information is out there, people. You just have to want to dig for the truth, and don't be satisfied with surface information. You have to keep on digging, because that rabbit hole is wide and it's deep, and it does go to the places that are uncomfortable and will challenge your belief systems. I mean, I'm guessing that some people might look at what you're surrounded by, the stones and the candles and the hood, and automatically think wizard, but they're not going to go deeper than that. In reality, this is nothing different than Joseph was doing, so we have to be willing to go to that place that's uncomfortable if we want to find the truth. The truth is not about the warm and the fuzzies. It's about getting at the information, the knowledge, so that we can grow from there and learn. Knowledge is important. Last parting words.
That's true. These are just kind of props. I did this for fun. I don't like to use seer stones and stuff, but I have had plenty of contact and revelation, but I've never been involved in something like a seance. That sort of thing. When I was a kid, I was around when a Ouija board was used, and I was like freaked out by the shit stuff that happened. I was like, not okay, don't feel good, and some really weird things happened with an apparition above that room where that happened another time, and it was just, a ghost appearance to my brothers, freaked them out. The dog woke me up. The dog was going just nuts. Against the closet where the guy had opened the door and shut it, went in, and my dad came out. He went and got a baseball bat or something, like, oh, get in there, kids. And the dog woke everyone in the house up going nuts. And my brothers said, well, the dog's barking. We chased this guy in there that walked in, and it was right above where the Ouija board was. So the next day, I burned the Ouija board, because it was in the basement right below this room. And, so I was trying not to be affected by that stuff.
Well, we're affected. We are.
I just want to say we saw maybe two of those, but I saw the first one in its entirety on your symbolism thing, and it was awesome.
Oh,
we saw the other night.
Thank you very much.
You do a great job. Fantastic job.
Thank you. Well, tell us where we can find you. Give us your channel.
Well, my main channel is the Dodger Game channel. The easiest way to find any of my stuff, including the website, is if you Google Mormon Truth Videos. If you do that, Mormon Truth Videos or Mormon Truth Videos Gospel topic stuff, the website will come up usually number one on there, and for either of those, and then you'll have all kinds of videos. But the website goes topic by topic with narrative. Possibly including some of my run-on sentences and, that sort of a thing, and with applicable videos to those particular topics. One of them is called Restoring a Stairway to Heaven. And it's got this picture with the San Diego temple, then your, stairway to heaven inside the moon above it. And, or one of them, there are various names for these, and I usually have some layered messages in them that I think are also possibly helpful for SEO or something. But it says .weebly.com. That's way it's free, and if the Danites get me, my website will survive. So that's how you can find things. And I like going with the website, which I started this New Year, because it's topic by topic, and you've got applicable videos. You don't have to sort through 400 videos between, Dodger Game and then the lesser channel, which is somewhat repetitive, sometimes redundant, which is called Mormon Truth Videos on YouTube. So they're housed there. And there's a few other people's videos on there as well. I think probably the one you did for the interview with Christy Allen and her MK Ultra experience in the LDS Church.
Okay, excellent. So I am looking forward to a part 2. I really want to discuss how to navigate your way through ex-Mormonism. That's something I think is very important because there seems to be a dividing camp that's happening. So we'll discuss the importance of having the proper support. I want to thank you for your time and for your information, your testimony, your background that you've shared with us. please check him out. He puts out a lot of really great information. You have 400 plus videos, correct?
I believe between the two, I have over 400. Yeah. But I only have like just under 600 subscribers because I don't have your pretty face to attract everybody, and anyway, you've got a lot more subscribers due to a lot of things that you do a fantastic job on, and somehow I'm hoping to get up somewhere where you are as well in doing my version in my experience and topic by topic, and yeah, it's pretty awesome to be able to find somebody that doesn't just reject me and persecute me like Joseph Smith, and can all get through this doing some big hits of CBD, girl.
We'll just toast to that.
I can't take it. And some mild drinks of barley disguised as ginger brew that I've got the V8 and some Dos Equis in here.
Excellent. And with that, guys,
one of the wisdom approved, even though they won't say so after Prohibition when they changed the meaning of everything that was in there.
Right, absolutely.
In the name of the age, grace and patience. Thomas Paine. Great book.
Well, guys, I hope you've learned something. We've had a good time. It is important to have a light heart. I have mentioned that in a couple of my videos before. So once you're removed from the pain, you can see these things as they are and even joke about it and have a good time with it. But they are still serious matters, and it's very important to both Dodger, Dave, and I as well to get the truth out there, the real heart of the matter. So we appreciate you joining in. This is Galactic Storyteller. You can reach me
at galacticstoryteller.com or on her Galactic Storyteller YouTube. And yeah, she's got a lot of great information. She's very well informed and has made a lot of effort to educate herself on some very pertinent topics related to the truth and authority claims of the LDS Church and the origins of religion. So, and a lot of other things too. So you can't go wrong visiting Madeline's channel and her website. So we'll get with part 2, and the audio is better on part 2 than it is on this one, because I'm looking into the future in my time machine. I mean my seer stone. Excuse me. Dodger out.